Hello, I'm Johnny Lewis, and this is my presentation for Module 12 for the Evaluation and Supervision case study. The case summary. The story of the case study is that a principal is conducting end-of-year formal evaluations of teachers. It appears to be rushed and at the last minute, and one of those teachers is a new teacher, Mrs. Stevens. He has been in her classroom a few times throughout the year and has noted her difficulty with students, with student discipline and engagement, but it doesn't appear that she's been provided any feedback in the past. And so during his evaluation review for her at the end of the year, when he notes these things that he has, that the case study tells us he's known about throughout the year but never mentioned to her, he finds her defensive and irritable. So this is on a Thursday. He follows up with her again and does another review on a Monday, and upon seeing that she has the same struggles, he recommends her contract not be removed. Mrs. Stevens suggests that this evaluation is unfair because she's not received any real supervision. In other words, she's never received any feedback or help or goals toward work to work through. This is all new information to her, and she vows to fight the evaluation form if it's submitted. So here are some ethical and legal issues related to this case study. Depending on the district contracts and local employment laws, the principal could be subject to litigation for unfair labor practices as the basis of her non-renewal. It appears to be very subjective and without any effort to inform her of prior concerns. It's all based on this one person's opinion, and she receives feedback only one time. In my district, based on the contract that the Teachers Association has with the school board, this would not be an acceptable reason for letting her go or not recommending her hiring without there having been some sort of improvement plan recommended for her in the past. Ethically, the principal has made no effort to provide her with any constructive feedback, and so he's not really helped her to grow as a teacher. Her response that she's not received supervision feels accurate. And so waiting until the end of the year to provide her with feedback implies that he expects teachers to arrive at his school as sort of perfect educators who meet all of his demands and understanding without receiving any feedback or opportunities for growth. Also, he's the only evaluator, and so it is possible that the issue here are his expectations or his lack of experience in the classroom even, and not Mrs. Stevens' classroom style. So the synthesis of the study is this: by continuing with this subjective once-a-year style of evaluation, the low feedback, the feedback form, which does not allow to really dig into what the lesson was or how different things connected, but sort of provides a yes or no type of answer. This risks high turnover rate with staff. That risks high student or poor student performance and low building morale. It is very unlikely that teachers are all going to arrive at this school meeting this principal's standards, and so it's incredibly likely that teachers will continue to be fired. As it relates to people, the synthesis of the facts, there's the principal. He's conducting evaluations in a rush. We're told he's kind of doing it at the last minute at the end of the year. He finds her classroom skills ineffective. He's thought that before throughout the year, but never provided her with that feedback. And then there's Mrs. Stevens, who we assume is a first-year teacher. She's received a negative review, even though the case study does mention she's knowledgeable in her content area. It's just her classroom management and engagement skills that are lacking. As in regards to place, there's not really a specific place or community named, and so I want to discuss kind of the people of the place. That includes students. Student learning is negatively affected when there's a constant change in teacher, and there's a lack of consistency there, and so an evaluation system that also doesn't encourage teacher growth, but just sees whether they meet a certain standard or not, doesn't help teachers to grow in their classroom skills, and that also affects student learning. The faculty, the morale, and the professional growth of faculty will be negatively affected. There's a danger here of faculty becoming stagnant if they meet evaluations, or of faculty turnover, which leads to low morale and people not wanting to work at this particular school. And then for the district, for the people who are responsible for recruiting talented teachers, seeing ongoing turnover in some of the same jobs at the same school over and over will keep quality teachers from applying for those positions. And so these are the programs that are of concern. There's a concern with the evaluation system and the evaluation forms that are used at this school. It's sort of one size fits all, one evaluation fits all. It appears that there's not a professional learning system that's connected to evaluation systems in this school. We aren't really told what they do for professional development. And then the employee recruitment and retention programs for the district are also at risk. So now we can consider whether the conflict or the situation could be damaging to stakeholders or to the community. Again, this can be very damaging to the district in their efforts to recruit quality teachers. There's an opportunity here for high turnover rates. It can be damaging to the district in contract negotiations with teacher groups who see ongoing turnover and unfair evaluation practices. And then finally, this is bad for students who are attempting to grow and for staff who aren't given the opportunity to grow and to develop their teaching skills. Groups with an important stake in the outcome obviously are the principal, Mrs. Stevens, the students, the school district, and the school staff. One of the key issues here is that relevant stakeholders have definitely not been consulted. There's no mention of the principal contacting a district HR person, talking to a mentor, talking to some stronger teachers and asking them to help Mrs. Stevens. He's just kind of taking it all on his own, which again makes this very subjective because this is one person's opinion. Are there more things we could learn about this situation? It would be helpful to know what teachers beyond Mrs. Stevens feel or have experienced in their evaluation processes. It'd be helpful to know exactly what the district's policy about evaluations and contractual obligations are as it relates to evaluations, but there is definitely enough here to make a decision. There is a risk here of keeping a teacher who may not grow if the principal chooses not to recommend that Mrs. Stevens not be rehired. It's possible she just doesn't want to grow as a teacher and that she'll receive tenure. But continuing with an ineffective evaluation and professional learning system feels more risky because unless something changes, there are potentially great teachers in this building who will not grow or who will even wind up being fired unnecessarily or who will choose to leave the school. And so here are some options that the principal could consider. Option one would be just to keep Mrs. Stevens and ignore the weaknesses that he's seen or the areas for growth. The supporting arguments for that is that it's low turnover. If you never fire anybody, there's no turnover. There's no hard conversation for administrative leadership. It's possible that she could grow on her own over time. He could assume that with 5 years of teaching, she's just going to get better and kind of trust her to do that. It's possible her replacement could be even worse or will arrive with less knowledge of content. And some teachers may really appreciate being in a place where they don't receive any negative feedback or constructive criticism. Here are the potential consequences for that choice. Student learning will definitely suffer from stagnant teaching skills if the evaluation system isn't changed. Colleagues will likely resent teachers who aren't growing, who aren't doing what they need to do to grow on their own, who aren't taking it on their own. Those kind of star teachers who do those things on their own without any push from the administration could be resentful. Poor student learning and lack of teacher growth can affect the principal's position at the school. In the long term, if the school's not doing well and not improving, it's quite possible that unless the district has the same stagnant evaluation system, that this principal won't be there. And then high quality teachers will desire to work elsewhere. Option two, the principal could continue with his plan and just fire Mrs. Stevens. The supporting arguments for that is that keeping her another year risks giving tenure to a bad teacher. Keeping a poorly performing teacher can affect morale. The next hire could be even better, could be more experienced. If it's like my district policy, it only technically requires one observation, and so it's possible that he's following the rules. The consequences of this are that we're not addressing the issue of an ineffective evaluation system. Student learning can still suffer, and teacher morale and district recruiting can still suffer. And then option three, which I think is the best option, you could keep Mrs. Stevens, create an intentional and embedded professional growth plan for her that helps her develop in partnership with colleagues, and then revamp the evaluation system to a year-round feedback cycle and use it as a model for future evaluation systems for all staff. The reasons for this, research suggests this is the most effective form of growth and evaluation. We learn more by watching and having conversations with our colleagues and developing tips with them than we do from kind of one-size-fits-all lecture style professional development. And then long term, this addresses the key issue so that talent, you don't just have to acquire perfect teachers from the very beginning, which are as rare as a unicorn. Instead, you can develop talented teachers who have great knowledge of the content. The potential consequences for this would be that longtime teachers may not love a new evaluation system and increased observation time. Mrs. Stevens may not work out. She may not be a great teacher after 5 years in such a system. And it does create more work for the administrative staff potentially to find time for. And so evaluating these options, I think option one, it's very unlikely that this is ever going to result in a number of highly successful teachers. Option two eliminates one ineffective teacher, but it does nothing to develop a culture of effective teaching. And then I think option three is a good long-term plan, but there are risks for the principal to assume that he will have the time and buy-in to fully implement it. It will not be an easy choice. And so I believe option three is the best options to create Mrs. Stevens, to create an intentional and embedded professional growth plan for helping her develop in partnership with colleagues, to revamp the evaluation system to a year-round walkthrough, observation, and feedback cycle, and use it as a model for future evaluation systems for all staff. The principal needs a short-term plan to help Mrs. Stevens in an ethical and fair way, and a long-term plan that ethically addresses the overall evaluation and professional growth system of the school. To do this with the greatest care and concern of all stakeholders, the principal, Mrs. Stevens, the staff, students, and teachers, and the school's relationship with the community should all be given the greatest opportunity to encourage academic progress. This model, allowing Mrs. Stevens' plan to be sort of a groundbreaker and a test, is a creative way to then develop a bigger option for the staff. And so to implement, I would do this in two parts. Part one would be a short-term response. That would be to research and learn about effective, embedded, well-rounded evaluation professional growth systems. I'd meet with Mrs. Stevens and ask her what type of feedback might have been helpful to her, ask her to be part of this new journey that we would take together, to invite a mentor teacher to help her in developing her skills as an educator. That would include hands-on learning in the classroom. I would share the results of my research and this feedback with district stakeholders, PTA, and faculty while respecting confidentiality for Mrs. Stevens. And then I would develop a team. I would invite a diverse cross-section of faculty to begin researching themselves and developing and implementing a new model for teacher evaluation and professional growth together as a team rather than just subjectively being my feedback. Here are some observations or justifications for this. Research tells us that teacher evaluations should include a variety of data, should be focused on teacher growth and improvement, and provide means for teachers to offer and receive feedback reflectively. Strategies for developing a collaborative professional culture that's designed to support improvement should provide teacher evaluations for all staff that encourages reflection, opportunities to give and receive feedback, should place emphasis on growth and not just being perfect from the beginning, and should provide relevant professional development that supports each of these. Teachers should be involved in developing and implementing the systems for their learning based on their own perceived areas of growth and looking to colleagues to learn. And then aligned goal trainings that are more intentional include peer-to-peer coaching. This program, the research has shown that this works and leads to improved school improvement and student success. And then a long-term response would be to use Mrs. Stevens and her mentor teacher, as well as information gleaned from research, to begin the development and implementation of a goal-aligned professional growth plan, to invite the faculty team to present feedback, research, and their plan to district stakeholders, PTA, and faculty, and invite questions or insights into ongoing improvements for revisions, to initiate this new evaluation system that includes peer-to-peer engagement, and to include other data related to student achievement and school improvement in the evaluation of the new model's success for creating relevant professional growth for teachers. The justification for that is that research suggests including data other than observations is important for student success, that engaging staff in feedback and evaluating and supervising staff encourages teacher successes, that walk-through observations from administrators should be frequent. Teachers should be used to that. Mrs. Stevens says she's not used to that. and peer-to-peer teacher observations result in student achievement and growth.